We have Intact with us today, and they're going to be joining us in just a few minutes for designing for quality intentional activity design. But before we turn it over to Intact, we would like to share a few reminders and some updates with you. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kendall Cook, who is going to lead us through this portion of the presentation.
Hello, good morning. Happy April, everyone. We're happy to have you back for what I believe 7 out of 8 of our professional development series. So before we get started, we just do want to give quick reminders. Of course, this is our 21st century team, our leadership, with our fiscal monitors as well. Just some housekeeping. If you're just joining in, please help us capture attendance by putting your program name and unit number in the chat. As far as web etiquette, please keep your cameras off. That'll help us save bandwidth as we are recording these sessions. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop anything in the chat. So let's address program attendance update forms. Hopefully you have seen the notifications in the listserv regarding the changed dates for second and third installment. We do want to highlight the third installment will be due on a Thursday, April 30th. So please mark your calendars for that. Again, this requirement is for 75% of your students above 90 plus hours of participation. So if you have any issues, concerns, questions, need assistance filling out the program attendance form for the third installment, please reach out to your program administrator. Okay. We do have some upcoming trainings, with being next week, actually building a data culture part 2. This is in person at our DPI office. This will be from 9 to 3. Remember, you're supposed to bring a copy of your data collection plan. So this will be an interactive workshop for you all to get engaged and really bring your template, get some great feedback, and be a thought partner to this process and ongoing conversation of data. We do have a bit of construction going on around our DPI office, so be prepared for delays. We'll try to communicate that as best as possible as we draw closer to that day. And we ask that you bring a lunch or plan for a local pickup or delivery. We really want to keep the ball rolling so we can get you all out on time, but give you all the information you need for this training. Okay, so we look forward to seeing you all next week. Just want to highlight the next upcoming training in person too will be for the continuation application. This will be June 10th from 9 to 3 as well, presented by the DPI 21st Century Office. There will be a virtual option available for PSUs to support year inbound closeout. So we'll send more information. As always, please check the listserv for the most up-to-date information or reach out to your program administrator with any questions or concerns. By now, hopefully you received a notification. NCCIP supplemental applications have been released and are now available. Remember to use your most recently approved budget 209 that was submitted and approved by your fiscal monitor and CCIP. Ensure that expenditures do occur between July 1st and September 30th so it can align with the supplemental award. So again, if you have any questions regarding that, feel free to reach out to us or your fiscal monitor. Just wanted to highlight something here that we said about this. This is a screenshot up here from what was submitted in the listserv. It says required documentation for summer installment. So just using that as an example in case in point, and it says related and optional documents. So I just wanted to highlight when we say related and optional, it's not a suggestion to submit. We're actually referencing the title and the location in CCIP. So here's a screenshot here from CCIP. This is required documents. And then as you scroll down, you will see optional documents down here. So this is kind of where we want to streamline where documents are being uploaded to and clarify some of that language. So we hopefully we didn't throw anyone off. But for summer documents, if you do have a summer program, these are the requirement documents that we did look for, or we're still waiting a few to come in. But please make sure that your summer documents are updated throughout the summer. We've noticed that a couple of documents do expire throughout summer programming, so you want to make sure that you keep an eye on that, keep that on your radar, and make sure that they update it. But just to clarify the language, these are required documents, but as in where you upload them in CCIP, it may go under required or optional. Just a reminder about instructional staff surveys. That was in our last training in the month of March by Kathleen Mooney. We have to serve. So if you have any questions, here's her contact here. We'll also put it in the listserv and send that out so you can have direct access to that email. And you have any questions about entering data at 21DC, you can still direct that towards your program administrator, towards the 21st Century team. All right. So today's workshop, where we're all here, we're doing a nice transition into summer. So we're excited. We're closing out the school year programming. It's been going well. Now we're thinking about how we're going to modify it for summer programming and what activities we're going to have. So we're glad to have our friends again from Intact here to kind of help guide us through that. So I don't see any questions or anything pressing right now in the chat that we can address later on, but at this point, we'll turn it over to Intact.
All right, thank you guys very much. We'll go ahead and share our screen, and then we'll jump in. All right, there we are. Well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you all here again for another awesome session. Today's session is designing for quality. So today we're focusing on intentional activity design. While the themes and like the cool field trips that we do are going to be the highlight of our summer programming, they've got to remain grounded in the theory of action that we've been working with throughout our time together, these past 8 months or what have you. So today we're going to learn how to move from random, fun, high impact stuff, random fun to high impact data driven stuff, right? So we're going to talk about how we can make sure we're intentionally designing the aspects of our program and the activities so that we're achieving the outcomes that we've already set up for ourselves. So before we jump in, I am Chaz Sumners. I have a background in English and special education. I taught both for over a decade. And during that time, and in addition to that time, for longer than that, I worked in after-school programs. So I started as a volunteer in high school, then became a frontline staff in college, then moved up to site coordinator, program director. So I'm familiar with a lot of the struggles that come with the different tiers, we should say, of staffing when it comes to out-of-school time programs. So I'm excited to talk about what it means to really put together a awesome activity that is aligned to our needs and supports what outcomes that we're looking to do. And joining me today is Yana List.
Hey Chaz, great to be with you and great to be with all of you again. I am also a former teacher and was also an after-school coordinator and a frontline staff person, and was also a curriculum coordinator in a high school. So I really come to this from thinking about activity design and how do we create high quality activities that are also really educational. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Chaz.
Absolutely. All right. So what are we going to do today? What are our guideposts for today? Well, today we're going to talk about how to design activities that align with your theory of action. And remember, your theory of action is something we developed in previous sessions together. So first, we're going to build the gap between your needs assessment, which we set up very early on, where we figured out what our program needs, what the particular needs for our community are. And then we're going to align those with a single measurable outcome. Again, both of these things should already be in your logic model that we've developed. So we're going to use the things that we've already developed to actually build an activity using our intentional design planner, which is also part of the summer learning planner that we've shared with you. And then finally, we're going to ensure the activity is real by placing it in your schedule and your staffing plan. Because, I mean, quite frankly, if it's not staffed and scheduled, it's not going to happen. And we can't make sure we don't want to be scrambling, in the moment to make sure it's staffed and scheduled and supplied. We want to make sure that that's done ahead of time. And that's part of an intentional activity design. So let's talk about why intentional design matters. So many of you and your staff design activities every single day, right? It's something that you do in program. And when you design them, they're fun, right? Today, we're going to take a really close look at taking that fun and then making sure it's also impactful. So to ensure that fun is really impactful, we need to ensure that fun activities are designed for outcomes, goals that we want to achieve in our program. 21st CCLC programs aren't just here to fill time, regardless of how many people tell you that what you're doing is babysitting, which I can't stand, right? They really exist to support academic enrichment and meaningful family engagement. And they also help you meet goals that you set out for your community, right? Like as you do your needs assessment, you figured out that there are gaps, ways in which your community could be better supported. Your program is here to support those in meaningful and intentional ways. Intentional design is how you protect your budget, your staffing, and all the other aspects of your program while you're improving outcomes, right? By ensuring that every activity earns its place because it's intentional and it deserves to be there. It's not just a space filler, it's not just fun, it's intentional. It ensures that what you do is directly aligned with the student needs that you've already identified as part of the legwork that you've done for your program and your logic model. So let's take a moment to talk about what that looks like. In the chat, I'd love you to just add the name of an activity the students loved last summer that they really connected with. And then add one component that made them connect with it. So give me just the name of the activity and then one thing that made students really connect with it. It could be something like competition, teamwork, choice, hands-on, real-world problem, something like that. So go ahead and share in the chat with me something last summer that really landed and what really made that connection with our youth. We got a mystery scavenger hunt with problem solving skills. I love that. I do love a good scavenger hunt. I groan when you give me the sheet, but once I'm in it, I am in it. I am locked in. STEM hands-on stuff, right? Yeah, I love a good science experiment, right? And one that's more than just like a volcano that explodes, like a really cool, impactful science experiment. Some good stuff. Water play by group, right? Yeah, and we can really add some rigor to that water play too, and we can talk about how we can take something that is fun and freedom and gives you choice, but also makes it intentionally addressing the outcomes that you have. The good old egg drop challenge. Yes, I remember that. I was never very successful at that. Not that or keeping the egg for like a week or whatever you had to do. I wasn't good at either of those things. Apparently, all I'm good at doing with eggs is cooking them. So having options between water play and indoor activities. Yes, choice and options are huge, a huge element of making sure that we have really impactful and engaging activities. Some bottle rockets, right? Understanding payload and altitude. I love that. Yes. And I mean, very timely now, right? We just went back to the moon. So it's a really cool thing to tie to real world events with our students. Like, look, the more you do this, maybe, sometime soon you'll be building the next rocket. Lego engineer activities. Yes, listen. As somebody who loves building with some good old bricks, I enjoy that. Prying them apart is always a problem. You always lose that prior, which is a bit of an issue. Oh, taking old recycled materials to create something new. Yes, I love that. And I love showing students that things don't have like a end life cycle, right? They can just be repurposed into doing something else with them. Making food, pizzas, yeah. One of my favorite things that I used to do is solar oven pizzas. So you build a little solar oven with a cardboard box and some aluminum foil, and we learned about how solar radiation works, and then we use that to cook little pizzas. Marshmallow house building, yes, absolutely. Some delicious architecture. Oh, a whole summer Olympics, Shanta? That sounds really fun too. So, what I'm seeing here is that we have some really fun activities, and I'm seeing a lot of us have aligned what our needs are. We've identified the needs for that our students have with the activities that we're putting together. And they're driving these outcomes, right? They're driving outcomes like, higher STEM engagement, making sure that we have, really engaging hands-on activities and really meaningful experiences for students. I want to encourage you to think about if there are any of these activities that you'd like to hear more about from your colleagues. We can always ask them to unmute. We might be able to bring some new intentionally designed activities back to your own program. So if there's something cool that you want to dig into, absolutely willing to do that right now because we've got a little extra time. And I really love making sure that there's a place and space for you guys all to share ideas. Dash robots. Jessica, can you just tell me a little more about Dash robots actually? Because I am just curious. You don't have to unmute if you don't feel comfortable doing it. You can just type if you want, but I just want to know what Dash robots are.
So we purchased Dash last year for our kids, and it's a part of coding. They get to code the robots, and they actually last summer they had a multicultural parade using the Dash bots. So they were able to build different things to add on to their bots, and it made them unique, and they really enjoyed it.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we do a lot with Dash and Spiros with our students for coding.
Okay. But Poppy's asking how many robot to kid. Like what's your ratio, Jessica?
Usually it's small groups. So we usually have about 3 or 4 students in a group to robots.
Okay. And then do they code with cards, or is it like a program that they use?
It's a program called Wondershop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we train our staff, and then they work with the students with helping them learn the code. And we do some cards, but a lot of it's on the iPad. They connect to the iPad using the app.
Yeah, that makes sense. That really seems like a really cool activity. You guys have a lot of really awesome stuff you're already doing. Debbie, I'm looking at this etiquette workshop too, and that looks really cool. You have a whole restaurant set up. And you have the older students be wait staff and servers. That's really cool. I like that. Not only are you learning like fun, like on the job skills, but you're learning those interpersonal skills that we don't really focus on until students start to get older. So I really love that as an activity that drills down into that. So awesome. You guys are already developing some really amazing activities. So let's talk about how we can add some depth, even more depth and rigor to them. So your needs assessment tells you what matters most right now for your students and your families. It covers their academic needs, but it also covers their voice, right? And when we say their voice, we mean their interest and their values, right? The things that are important to them. And your outcomes are the change you hope to see in your students. So both of these were described in your logic model that we created back in, I want to say December. So December sounds right. Sorry, time's a construct. It gets tricky. So now's a really good time to take those back out and look at them, right? Because something we did in December last year can slip out of our mind. So I encourage you to take them out because we're going to be working with them a decent amount throughout the course of this session here today. So when you built that logic model, you wrote in your theory of action. And your theory of action is what you do and why. And it's informed by your needs assessment and what your outcomes are, right? So your theory of action sounds something like, we are here to provide these supports and services to students, and they will, to achieve this outcome. So as a quick reminder to yourself and others, can you share in the chat your 1 or 2 sentence theories of action? After you do, don't put your logic model away because we're going to use them later and actually fairly continuously throughout this presentation. So go ahead and share in the chat what your 1 or 2 sentence theory of action is. Remember, that's the what you do and why. Like, what are you doing as a program and why are you doing it? Our teens life skills program, where the kids got to learn real life skills like changing the oil in a car. Oh yeah, absolutely. That is a really good activity too. I really love a good hands-on activity for something that is a skill that students might not be able to practice, right? And something that empowers them, right? That's a skill that you go out into the world and like, oh, I know how to change the oil. I know how to change a tire. I feel more empowered. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Are we feeling a little hesitant about our theories of action? Is that why? All right, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I encourage you to think about. Oh, wait, hold on. But for our members to have growth, not only in academics, but with real world life skills as well. I like that, right? We're supporting the whole student, right? We're meeting them where they are, and we are addressing the needs that they have, regardless of what they are. We have provide targeted reading and math support to increase proficiency in early grade students while integrating STEAM and SEL enrichment. That is a very specific and very detailed theory of action. I love that. And I feel like you only get that level of specific when you've done a really good and thorough needs assessment and figured out what your students need, right? Because to me, Angie, it seems like you figured out that maybe your students' reading and math scores aren't exactly where they are, particularly in our early grades. So we're looking for a way to support those. And so that's what our outcome is, right? Our need is more support with math and reading proficiency, getting those scores up. And then our outcome is increased scores, right? So then what are the intentional activities that we're doing to support that? Giving kids a safe place to grow while having fun, right? Yeah, absolutely. When it comes like taking everything else away, that's what we're here for, right? We're here to grow both, emotionally and intellectually, academically, while having fun, right? Because we want to make sure that our students are actually enjoying what they're doing, so they come back. Our students vote with their feet, after all, right? Oh, provide problem-solving skills to support adjustments into life socially and intellectually. Yeah, right. Providing them sort of a gentler on ramp into this chaos that we call life, right? Because sometimes that on ramp is just a cliff, and they just shove you off it, and they're like, "All right, well, have fun living life, go pay those bills and whatnot," right? But if we can give them a little gentler on ramp onto that, I think that's a kindness we can do to the next generation. Let's see what we got here from Brittany. So, Power Schools Academy is a 5-week academic support program that uses a whole child approach to mitigate summer learning loss, and promote grade level reading readiness. I love that. And it seems like, we've identified that we need some sort of stopgap measure to stop that summer slide, right? And so, how are we going to do that? Well, we have this 5-week academic support program, very intentionally designed based on your needs and addressing an outcome that you have. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. So all this is to say that in between our needs and our outcomes within our logic model are these amazing activities that we design. And we design them intentionally based on this data that we've collected and what we intend to, the impact that we intend to have. So I asked you to keep your logic model handy. Right now, I want you to identify one program outcome that you want to plan an activity around today. As a heads up, you're going to use this program outcome that you selected for the rest of our activities today. So make sure it's one that you really want to drill down on. And then with this outcome in mind, I also want you to tell me a way that you can measure it, right? Because having a great outcome is awesome. But if we don't know the impact that we're having and we don't know the level in which we're the outcome is actually being produced, then that's not helpful for us. So go ahead and share in the chat one program outcome that you want to plan an activity around today, and then one way you're going to measure that outcome. So maybe it's, supporting, ELA skills in our early grades, like we were talking about earlier. And then maybe the way that we're measuring that is what our standard assessment is, like, our state assessment is. I think even if you don't, I'm seeing in the chat that some people don't have their needs assessments. I think that's okay. I think particularly at this point in the year, you probably have a really good sense of what your program needs. So just, think about a need that you've identified in your program, just living the life of a program person, and we can use that too. At least 20% of scholars growing in their reading comprehension as measured by pre and post assessments. I love that. All right, awesome. ELA skills and how they handle tough situations. Oh, yes, the failure tolerance, teaching failure tolerance. Always fun, right? Adults don't like to fail, let alone children. All right, so encouraging collaboration with one another. All right, ELA skills are definitely, I mean, always an important thing, right? Because very soon, if you're younger, you're reading to learn, right? Or you're learning to read. If you're older, you're reading to learn. So either way, those literacy skills are incredibly important and foundational for any other subject that you're talking about. Supporting multiplication math facts for upper elementary students. Measurement is taken from problems the students are able to solve or not. Right. Okay. So yeah, we do a benchmark, right? So beginning, middle, and end, we figure out just how much a student has improved. Continue support for STEAM through the use of coding activities with Finch. All right, awesome. Yes, absolutely. Smoother transitions for students coming in from kindergarten. Oh, yes. Or coming to kindergarten. Yeah, that's tough. Some students, I mean, and that's the toughest point because you never know where they're coming from. Are they coming from just home where they had no formal experience with structured education? Have they been in preschool since they've been a baby? That's a really tough thing. And so I think that's one of the example of a holistic goal for a student, an outcome that we're looking at instead of just our hard, crunchy academic outcomes, right? Program outcome, increase ELA assessment outcomes by 2 points. There we go, perfect, right? We've identified that our ELA scores are, a little weaker than we'd like them to be. Our outcome is a increase by 2 points, and that's our measurement, right? We're clearly measuring how effective it is. Needing to learn how to create curriculum for our club time. Yes, yeah, that is a serious need. I get that. And I think today's session is really going to help you with that because part of creating a really good curriculum is being intentional, right? And so you're doing the same things when you're building a curriculum. You're being intentional in the design the same way. It's just sort of a level up from what we're doing right now with the individual activities. All right. Wow. This is the thing. Like I'm gonna take a moment and say that we're always singing your praises about how active you guys are and how engaged you are, and this is amazing. Thank you guys so much for all being, engaged and participating. Getting teens brought in and engaged with activities, trying to motivate them to actually provide feedback on what they want to do. Right? Yeah. It's all well and good to say that we need to incorporate student voice and choice, except when they don't want to tell us anything, right? So then sometimes we got to get really creative in the ways that we get that, that voice from them. Awesome. All right. So now that we've identified an outcome that we want to plan an activity around, let's jump into talking about how to do it. Let's look at this intentionally, right? On tab 9 of your summer learning planner is the intentional design planner. For each activity you do, whether it's a K-pop club, whether it's nature walks, if you complete this, you can be sure that what you're doing is intentional, right? That you're intentionally designing the activity step by step. So we're going to look at each part together. Let's start with your program SMART goal. So Who amongst you have already created program-wide SMART goals for yourself? I know. I know. The crickets are almost intentional because sometimes we forget that we need to make sure that we have goals that are very specific, measurable, that we can actually track, these kinds of things, right? Um, if you have trouble building those, I suggest that you lean on tabs 4 and 12 in your planner because those are your needs assessment and your logic model tabs. They will help you put together a very impactful SMART goal that is aligned to what the needs of your program are. Yeah, absolutely, Susan. We'll make sure that we get a copy of the summer landing planner to you. Um, so, student voice, right? You should already have this information as part of your needs assessment that you completed. Look for that in tab 4, like I was saying. If you don't have that information, I encourage you to start to gather that information because it's really difficult to intentionally plan impactful, really good activities if you don't know what the needs of your students are. And then we have this activity, right? So we have our SMART goal for our program. We know what our students really want to do. So for an individual activity, how do we target an outcome, right? This is where we get to be creative. This is, you're doing a nature walk, you're doing a music club, you're doing some sort of drama thing, something like that, right? And now that you've thought of the high level idea of the activity, we want to be very specific in the description of the intentional design of our activity. So we want to talk specifically about how we're going to blend students' needs with what they want, right? How do we take the needs that we know exist in our community? How do we infuse them with the student voice to create an activity that students want to do, but also targets skills that they need support? That's the key. That's the crux of intentional activity design. And that's why it's so important that you have some really good data when it comes to needs assessments and you've identified some very specific and actionable outcomes. Once you've done all that, then you develop an activity SMART goal, right? So here you drill down, and just for the activity, we talk about what we're going to do, what our goal is, and what it looks like. You're going to consider what learners will do by the end of the activity to show that they're making progress towards the larger program SMART goal. So this activity SMART goal is going to tangentially link to your larger program SMART goal. But that's the point, right? When you have an intentionally designed system, all of these things link together. This is just the first half of the intentional design planner, and it's a lot. So let's pause here to look at an example of just what I've talked about here in this first half. So here, we have a program SMART goal for this program, right? By the end of the summer, 80% of participating middle schoolers will demonstrate increased confidence and communication skills as measured by staff surveys. There we go. Very high level program SMART goal that is informed by the needs assessment that we've created, and we know what our outcomes are. We know what the goals are for our program for the year. Now, when we did our student voice survey, we got a lot of comments saying, I want to listen to K-pop. I love to dance. BTS, Blackpink, these are my favorite bands. So clearly, our students are very involved in Korean culture and particularly Korean music, right? K-pop. So the activity that we put together is a K-pop club. Now, K-pop clubs, music clubs are fun always, right? But how do we make sure they're intentional, right? How do we make sure that they are targeting what our program SMART goal is, which is, and I'll remind you, increasing confidence and communication skills as measured by staff surveys. So the staff surveys are the way that we are gathering this information and measuring it, right? Well, we do that by making sure that in that K-pop club, students are going to learn choreography and lyrics, and they're going to prepare a short presentation or performance, right? These are all things that will boost their confidence and their communication skills as they go through the activity. So then the next step is the very specific design and description of why this links up, right? Sort of a deeper version of what I just did for you. So this activity taps into students' passion for K-pop while building public speaking, collaboration, and cultural awareness. Youth lead the planning and choose how they want to share, either through dance, slides, or discussion. Very specific, links our needs to our outcomes, and also bakes in what our student choice is, right? So not only are we incorporating student voice into the larger activity, but we're including student choice into what the method in which they're delivering it, right? How are they sharing? Are they doing it through a dance, slides, or discussion? And then, now that we have all of that together, now we need to create a activity specific SMART goal that speaks to our program SMART goal. So here, for this activity, by the end of summer, 90% of students will complete a K-pop showcase and submit a reflection identifying one communication strategy they used as documented in a simple checklist. Again, a very specific, measurable goal, right? One that we can track. This is what we want. And that way we make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. We make sure that the activity that we've developed is intentionally aligned to our needs and addressing our outcomes. All right. So that's the example for the first half of our intentional design planner. Let's look at the second half. Yana?
Thanks, Chaz. And everyone, I am so glad that we really started this with the needs because I think, and the needs and the goals, because I think we always need to remember that everything we're doing with our kids, with the activities that we're designing, it's all to support this broader 21st century goal of improving academic outcomes, in particular in literacy and mathematics. So really having that connection and really having that focus is going to be essential for creating activities that are meaningful and have those high impact activities that are really exciting, but also do that really important academic work that is going to be central to the long-term success of our students. So with that in mind, I think our next piece here is we are going to really start building on that goal for your students that we defined earlier. And we're going to ask you to go through, and you can do this on a sheet of paper or on a Word document on your laptop, whatever you prefer. We want to encourage you to create your own activity plan. We're going to give you some writing time to re-record that SMART goal that we talked about earlier that Chaz really encouraged you to share from your summer learning planner, excuse me. And then we're going to ask you to fill in these other components of your activity. So student voice, we're not going to stop and do surveys at the moment, but think about what your students love. You've observed that they get really excited when they are doing science experiments, or you've observed that they really are not interested in watching movies, or you have noticed that they are really excited and really ask a lot of great questions when you are doing some math games or some literacy puzzles, whatever it might be. So think about what you've observed about your students. Then you're going to record the activity. So what are students actually going to do in that activity? Our students are going to, for example, thinking about that goal, thinking about that example that Chaz shared earlier in that K-pop class, students are going to learn choreography and lyrics, and they're going to do a short presentation on their learning. So that's that just short description. we want to connect it to that intentional activity design. How is the activity you're laying out going to grow students' academic skills, kind of aligning with that academic need that you already know about? Finally, making sure that we have a SMART goal, making sure that we are defining what we want our student outcomes to be. And I believe there was a question earlier of should it be measurable? Yes, it should be something as measurable as possible. So 20% of our students increase their performance on the benchmark assessment. 80% of our students attend 90% or more of the activity, whatever it is. We want it to be as measurable as possible, because then that is something that we can judge for ourselves. Were we effective or not? So we will give you some writing time, and I'll ask you again to build out, based on that SMART goal that you shared earlier, build out an activity that is going to be engaging and fun and leverages student voice, uses what things are passionate about, while also meeting those academic goals. And I'm seeing in the chat box, a lot of you are mentioning that you don't have that summer learning planner. John just shared it in the chat box. John, thank you so much. So for any of you that don't have access to it, that's the link on our website, and you can just download it from there. But we'll give you all some quiet work time. When you're ready, when you filled out these 5 pieces, feel free to share your plan in the chat box. I'd love to get a bunch of them. As Ches said, we know that you all are really active participants, so we would love to see and hear from you. So we'll have some examples to discuss. As you're finishing up, we would love for you to pop your activity into the chat box with these 5 components. Or if you prefer, you are welcome to unmute yourself and share your activity design with the group. And I'm sure you'll have some great activity ideas that people will be screenshotting and grabbing to implement in their own programs. Yes, that's exactly right, Katie. Of our program goal is that overall piece of what we're hoping to accomplish over the course of the summer. And then that SMART goal is really drilling down to the individual activity that you've come up with in that activity design section, and really making sure that that activity goal is aligned with the broader program goal. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds before we start reviewing some of these ideas that are popping up in the chat. All right, it looks like we have some really cool ideas in the chat box I would love to share out. So thank you everyone for participating. Please keep popping those into the chat box to share these ideas with the other participants. So Dominique shared the activity topic, or the activity title is Real Talk Challenge. I'm sorry. Handle It Like a Leader, which is going to be an interactive role-playing game where kids act out real-life situations. They show the wrong reaction, then practice a respectful way to handle it. And other kids will vote on the best responses and get to lead their own scenarios. So that's a really great activity description. Dominique, I would love to hear kind of broken down of what the intentional design piece of this is. So what are we aligning with, what priority need you've identified, and what that SMART goal is, how you will know that your activity is effective. Kaylee shared that ELA improvement is a big priority in their program. And the program goal is improving children's growth, or helping students grow more in ELA. And they've created a template that students will use to create their own word search game to trade and complete each other's. And choosing this because students really enjoy and they love those logic games and partner work. So that's that student voice piece. And Kaylee says they'll know that the activity is helping by monitoring progress reports, as well as checking on the progress on the age of learning. So it sounds like you're going to be using some school day assessments to measure if your program is being successful, helping to support that, seeing more growth in our students. Thank you for sharing that. Jesse shared that the program SMART goal is that 80% of participants will be able to identify a personal subject of interest they would consider pursuing as a component in their future career. And this is part of student voice or aligns with student voice because students love doing things that are new, that are different from what they've done before. The activity that Jesse is specifically discussing is some virtual field trips aligned with the different subjects, the different careers they're interested in, and they're going to attend these in small groups. And then they're going to present it about their experience to the class or to the larger group. And the SMART goal is at least 50% of the kids that attend the virtual field trips will identify a subject area they're interested in learning more about. So that is a measure of, are they actually going to identify something they're interested in? I would also think about adding, especially because they're going to be doing a presentation, that is a great place to add a literacy goal as well, because students have to write their presentation, like write notes, create that PowerPoint or whatever they're going to use to present. So I think that's an opportunity to tie in some of that literacy together with that career readiness or that career exploration piece that we're already seeing. So thank you, Jesse, for sharing. So Zaria shared that the program SMART goal is that by the end of the program year, 70% of 4th through 6th graders will improve reading comprehension and show increased interest in reading based on assessments and participation. So we're using an academic goal of increasing that reading comprehension and using an assessment, and you can choose what kind of assessment you want. You can do an assessment in your program. You can look at school day assessments. That is up to you and up to the data that you can access. And then participation. And so that's going to be an interesting question of how you're going to measure that. Remember, our SMART goals should be measurable because that is how we then can compare and decide if we were effective. So a measurable SMART goal, if we're interested in participation, it could be that there's an increase in attendance. It could be that there's an increase in students asking questions. It could be that you give a little survey on asking students how much they enjoy the activity, whether they're interested in it, etc. So those are all options. So thank you for sharing that and thinking through that piece. And really making sure that we are then integrating that student voice, because you know that kids want things that are fun, relatable, interactive, instead of boring. Maybe you've had kind of some informal conversations with students. Then the detailed specific activity that they're going to be doing is that students are going to read engaging, age-appropriate stories in groups and participate in discussions, games, and creative activities, such as acting, drawing, and rewriting or creating new endings. The intentional design, how needs and wants are blended. So you're choosing those high-interest books, that's that student voice, student interest. And pairing them with interactive hands-on activities to build comprehension. You already identified that reading comprehension is a big need in your program. So tying that in ways that are going to be exciting and interesting is really essential. So Zaria, thank you for sharing that. And creating that really detailed activity SMART goal. 80% of students will actively participate in reading activities and show improvement in comprehension through quizzes, discussions, or projects. And so you're still working through that specific activity, but it looks like we are very much on the right track and really seeing an activity that is going to be interesting and exciting, but also develop those literacy skills that are so essential for our kids. Okay, let's see. Let's do, I don't know, let's say one more. So Angie shared that the program SMART goal is that 75% of students will increase their DIBELS scores from the beginning of the year to the end of the year by 95 points. Or the goal for summer is to maintain the end of year score. So if they're assessed at the beginning of the summer and the end of summer, or the end of the school year and the end of the summer. Student voice. So you've talked to your kids, you know, they are really interested in texts about animals. I really like Angie, the call out of nonfiction across the board. Students do much better with fiction than with nonfiction reading and reading comprehension skills. So anytime we can encourage that nonfiction reading, that's so valuable. The activity that Angie is describing is that students will work in small groups to read nonfiction decodable books based on different animals. And they'll use Legos or clay or other sculpting materials to create their animal and habitat. So they're going to create a model of the animal they read about. In that story, they probably learned about the habitat of that animal. So they're going to have to create that in 3D with various materials. This is a way to really integrate those academic and student interests, academic needs and student interests, because students are doing that reading, practicing their comprehension, asking them skills, questions to check in and check on student fluency with decoding and reading comprehension. And doing that art activity is going to be responsive to student interests. A lot of students love doing those kinds of art projects, but it's also an opportunity to check in on reading comprehension. Are students creating an environment that is appropriate for whatever animal they're making? And so progress monitoring, the goal is to either increase or maintain MClass scores. Angie, thank you so much for sharing that. That is a really complete activity, start to finish. And it's a great one. I hope you end up implementing with your students. So thank you for sharing that one. Oh, well, there's one more. Pam, I'm going to share yours as well. So by the end of the 5-week program, 75% of K-5 students will improve their foundational math skills by at least 15% as measured by pre and post assessments. So that is really defining what, Chasmer, or the slide behind this. There we go. That is really defining how we're going to measure student progress. We've done some student voice with surveys and conversations about how they feel about their math skills. So we know that if students feel like they're behind, they might feel some anxiety, they might feel some stress. So supporting those math skills can be really impactful to help them feel more confident in mathematics. And the activity will be various math games. We love math games. For a really strong activity plan, we do want to build that out, thinking about what kind of activity math games you're going to play. And we're aligning with student voice, so thank you for sharing that piece. But we are really thinking about how this is aligning with that instructional design. How would this activity align with the student needs if we know that students have those needs or those gaps in math? Then games, we can choose math games that are aligned with those that practice the skills that we think our students are missing. So that is that is something that is really a high impact and could be really engaging for our students. And we always want to tie it back to that program SMART goal, what we want our students to develop in terms of skills, in terms of knowledge. Susan asked, will logic models for summer programs be the same as the school year? Yes, you can, we have designed this as part of the summer learning module, but you can make a copy of it and use it for the school year, use it under any circumstances that you want. One of the reasons we've started with that summer learning planner is because for a lot of programs, summer is an opportunity to start from scratch. It might be a new summer program. So that is an area of focus of why we chose that, but you can 100% use this tool for planning during the school year as well. In fact, we've really encouraged that. So thank you everyone for your participation. I think now we want to take some time to really think about how we are going to implement really that detailed level of how we are going to have students learn and practice these new skills. The reason we want to think about this early is because we want the design of our program to be engaging, and we need to align the program, the activity design, again, with those same SMART goals that we just talked about and some of you shared in the chat box. So first step is the learning method. There are a lot of ways that you can both introduce and have students practice in different approaches, different instructional approaches. Some of the approaches you could choose from include project-based learning, PBL, which is where students engage in extended hands-on projects, investigating a real question with the hope of creating a meaningful impact. You could also think about problem-based learning, where students start with a real-world problem that they analyze and then solve through inquiry and collaboration. You could think about service learning. Service learning combines academic and skill-based learning with meaningful service to benefit the community. And to making sure, the really important part is making sure to take time for reflection. And so service learning could be an example is students plan a literacy day for younger students and they lead activities on that literacy day. That is an example of a way that they can contribute to their program community and is an opportunity for them to practice their foundational literacy skills because they have to identify what activities they're going to do with students, as just an example. You could think about blended learning. Blended learning is when there's a mix of in-person activities with digital or online tools for deep engagement. It's a way to extend the learning beyond the program day. We could also think about place-based learning, which connects activities to the local community, culture, environment, helping students see the relevance of their learning within their surroundings. And then themed learning. Themed learning organizes activities around a unifying topic or principle of interest, allowing students to explore multiple skills through a single lens. So for example, if you have a K-pop club, students are going to participate in a bunch of different kinds of activities, but they're all based on that central theme of K-pop and creating activities that practice those essential skills while also connecting it to something that a lot of students are passionate about, which is K-pop. So that is really thinking about the method, how you're going to engage your students with that goal, with that activity plan we discussed earlier. You also have to think about the learning strategy. This could include things like peer-to-peer learning. This could include scaffolding. So some of our students or all of our students will need need support to be successful in our program. So what kinds of support services you can offer. guided reflection is a great one. We really want to create those meaningful learning opportunities. Whether you're doing project-based learning or place-based learning or theme learning, we always want to integrate opportunities for reflection. We also want to think about those 21st century skills that you may or may not be familiar with. But if you are familiar with the 4 C's of 21st century skills, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity, we want to integrate those into our program and activity design. We all know in the age of AI, we don't know what future careers are going to look like, but those soft skills are always going to be important and will help your kids be successful no matter what field they end up in. And finally, we also want to ensure that we're practicing the principles of positive youth development. There's a list of 5 C's: competence, confidence, connection, and character and caring. The C's are essential for developing youth as whole positive people. Again, this is that piece where we are thinking about the whole child, all the needs, not just the academic needs, but really thinking about the students' diverse needs within our program. So we are going to really reflect back and look at an example slide just so you have an idea. And then you are going to, not to worry, have some time to fill out your own example. So an example of a learning method, we're continuing that same example of we might choose to do an activity that is based around project-based learning, of where students co-design and produce a showcase with multiple roles and outputs, excuse me. So thinking about how we're going to share our learning, and that can be really a big project and a big learning opportunity for your youth because they have to think about all the ways to make something engaging and meaningful. And the learning strategy we're going to use is peer-to-peer planning and guided reflections, where students lead the process with adult support and reflect on their communication choices. So this might differ from a program environment or program situation where the program leader or the activity leader is kind of standing in the front asking students questions. Instead, this is an approach where students are asking other students those questions, giving those leadership opportunities, making it even more engaging for students. Then the 21st century skills that this kind of activity would promote. Communication is a huge one because students will have to practice verbal, visual, and nonverbal communication through their performance and planning. I'd also say that another thing that's going to be useful here is we really want to think about how we are going to increase collaboration. Students are going to be working in small groups. Sometimes there might be disagreements. Sometimes there might be conflict. So this kind of group work is an opportunity to practice and work on collaboration as well. It's also really just a great chance for creativity where students are going to be presenting their own versions, their own interpretations. And then finally, this is going to be an activity where we are promoting positive youth development. And positive youth development is really thinking about how we are increasing, in particular, those soft skills. And so the example given here is that students will take creative risks, lead peers, and reflect on their growth. And that's reflective of building confidence. And that is something huge we want to see in our students. We also want to think about this as an opportunity for developing competence too, because students are going to be the experts in whatever story, whatever topic they've read about. So that can be really reassuring for those students as well, of that sense that there is support when in reality it doesn't. Every student needs something different. And so we want to be considerate of that. And some of our students might be more independent and some of our students might be more collaborative and looking for more support. And we want to encourage them to make those discoveries, decide what kinds of working environment or collaboration works for them, and building that confidence, understanding themselves. So with that in mind, we're going to ask you to do the same thing. You're working with the same example that you shared earlier, or the same example you created earlier, excuse me. And now we're going to ask you to fill in what learning method you think is going to be most effective, the learning strategies that you are going to use to get kids engaged, to get kids participating, the 21st century skill or skills that students will develop, and the elements of positive youth development, how you're promoting the needs of that whole child. And if you're not sure about what these things are, remember learning method is the kind of instructional methods like project-based learning, problem-based learning, theme learning. And learning strategy is thinking about how students will engage and grow. A lot of those opportunities for either collaboration or scaffolding, guided reflection. The 21st century skills that students we want to think about and integrate for students to develop are critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And then that positive youth development, supporting the whole child, is known for really being there for each of our students and giving them all these opportunities to flourish in our program and develop these positive feelings of competence, of confidence, connection, character, and caring. So we would love for you to, again, work on that example, continuing on with these 4 elements. We'll give you some quiet practice time, and then I would love for you all to share. I know you have so many great ideas. As you are adding these pieces, you can share your response in the chat box if you'd prefer. We encourage you to unmute yourself and share that way as well, whatever is more convenient, more comfortable for you. And we would love to hear some of these ideas as you're continuing with that example we started with. All right, so it looks like we've got some great responses. Thank you all so much for sharing these, and I'd love to read them out. Keep adding your ideas. We'd love to hear some of these and really give everyone an opportunity to see some diverse activity ideas. You know, good educators borrow, great educators steal. So definitely copy whichever activities sound really appealing and implement them in your own program. We'd love to see that as well. So Paula shares that in their program, they use multiple learning methods in summer. So one example is the cooking class. It's an example of a project-based learning where project-based learning activity where students read a recipe, prepare and cook it, and make something that's kid-friendly and tasty. And this gives them some important life skills, those really important kind of 21st century skills of confidence, being able to cook for yourself. We know that once young adults are independent, this is something a lot of them struggle with because you're just not used to it. And it gives them practice in reading nutrition labels, thinking about how we can use healthy ingredients, promoting probably consuming some of those really important macronutrients. And that's an example of, again, that positive youth development as well, because we are giving our students the opportunity to build that confidence, to collaborate, to really learn to care for themselves at when they do become adults. Those are some great ideas. So thank you, Paula, for sharing. Rachel shared that their activity is a hands-on inquiry-based learning where students are going to explore cause and effect. They're going to build and test simple chain reactions and do really look into the why of things. We're going to make sure to give students opportunities for reflection. So using that as a learning strategy so that they can really see what worked well, what they can improve on. Developing some of those future skills like critical thinking and problem solving, and building that self-awareness, those decision-making skills. So here we have that positive youth development piece of thinking about their actions and really making plans for the future. And so Rachel, thank you for sharing that idea. Let's look at one or two more. Brandon shared a summer learning goal would be that 85% of the camp participants will maintain or improve their iReady reading and math levels. So that's the way that's going to be assessed. And that their program is going to employ certified teachers, so students get that academic support. It's going to be focused on STEM-based, project-based learning challenges, with some cooking and nutrition labs. So really, we would love to hear more details, Brandon, about what they're going to be doing in those activities. And how is that giving them opportunities to develop some of those 21st century and positive youth development skills as well. We see the academic benefit. We see the academic goal, but how are we also going to support 21st century and skills and positive youth development? So those are really questions to think about and reflect on as you are moving through your program design or activity design, making sure you're really hitting each of these pieces, making sure that you're really giving students diverse learning opportunities that are going to be really engaging. Jessie shared an example of service learning where students will be volunteering at the local food pantry with Centro Unido Latino Americano. And students are going to be helping to organize and create those distribution food boxes. And they're going to be learning about different food groups and engaging with the community and their culture. This will help them practice that collaboration and communication skills. They're going to be working with a lot of other people, students, probably adults as well. And this is an opportunity to develop connection and character and empathy. They're caring for their community. They're really engaging with their community, the people in their community that may be in need. And doing that in this hands-on way where they're also going to be have the potential to develop some of those literacy skills, looking at some of those, some of the kinds of available, understanding what goes into a complete meal. So thank you for sharing that one. So again, we want to really drill down as detailed as possible. So really thinking about specifically what activities students are going to be doing, what learning is going to happen, and that could be a combination of academics and some of those skills of thinking about how we get kids thinking, reflecting on their learning. All of those pieces are ways that we can create meaningful learning opportunities in our programs that are going to be exciting for students. Again, thinking about that student voice, doing things they're going to be interested in, while also thinking about and connecting to those academic goals, how we're going to measure those, and then making sure to assess. And then for us as program leaders and program staff, then at the end of the year, we want to make sure that we, or the end of the summer, we want to make sure that we are assessing ourselves, and we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to improve those academic outcomes. And we're never going to be perfect, so we can also think about what we're going to do to make change in the future. If we see that we were successful, but we could do better, or if we weren't successful, we might have to go back to the drawing board and rethink
she does something
Rethink our activities.
to just fire her. And they were like, based on what you said,
Oops.
she's not going to do something else.
So thank you everyone for sharing some of those ideas. So now that we have really thought through and developed some of these really high quality activities that are going to develop the literacy, the math, some of those academic skills, as well as positive youth development and 21st century skills, I really want to touch on something that we all love doing field trips with our kids. And summer can be a time to really go all out, especially because it might not be as easy or as possible during the school year. So we want to make sure that when we are doing field trips with our students, we are really making sure that these are field trips that align with the academic and positive youth development and 21st century skills of our programs, and they're actually meaningful. So going on a field trip is great, but are you connecting it to the learning, or are you just kind of getting out of the building for getting out of the building's sake? So we want to make sure that we are making those learning opportunities or those field trips learning opportunities, not just kind of fun and games. Because again, our 21st century programs fundamentally are focused on increasing academic performance in our students. So part of your summer learning planner is a field trip planning guide, and Chaz shared in the chat box the link to the summer learning planner if you don't have it. So you can click on it, download it, make any edits that work for you. And making sure that the activities we're doing when we are on field trips have a purpose. We're not just going for fun, but we are learning something meaningful. We're getting something out of this trip, excuse me. And of course, as many of you know, whenever you're planning field trips, you have to be really sensitive to the cost, the staffing needs, supervision. Do you need to have family volunteers so you have a really good ratio that's going to be safe for you and the kids? So those are all things to think about, but I do want to encourage going on field trips. They're a lot of fun, but I think we can expand and make them more meaningful by adding some reflection questions, by talking about what we're going to explore and see and how that connects to academic we're doing in our programs. So some of those small changes can be really impactful for the meaningfulness of your field trips and really a 21st century program more broadly. And so really let's kind of take that deep dive into planning an effective field trip. We are inching closer to summer. And so what I would love for you to do is, again, continuing with the activity example we have been following through that you started with your summer learning planner earlier in the session. I want you to plan a field trip that connects to it and think about, really think about what is the purpose of the field trip and how does it tie to your program SMART goals, or how can you tie it to your program SMART goals if it's not currently a priority. We will give you some time to really think through this, and it just like always, you'll share in the chat box. Again, what is the purpose of the field trip? What are you hoping to accomplish? And how does it tie into your program SMART goals that we've discussed, that we've been following through kind of from the beginning of this session? We'll give you some work time, and after you've answered these 2 questions, we'll ask you those same 4 questions we asked in the activity planning. What learning method are you going to be using? How will students engage, explore, and grow? What future ready skills will they practice? So those 21st century skills. And what developmental assets will be strengthened? How does this connect to positive youth development? If you already have some activities planned, some field trips plans, this is a great time to think about how those can support your academic goals, or just plan one that you would like to have connecting to the activity that you defined earlier. So we'll give you some work time. I will quiet down for a few minutes. And when you're ready, please share your answers to these in the chat box. What's the purpose of the field trip? How does it connect to your goals? And then think about what's the learning method? How will students engage, explore, and grow? How does this connect to 21st century skills? How does this connect to positive youth development? As you plan your activity or your field trip, excuse me, please share it in the chat box. And in a couple minutes, we'll start to share out some of your great ideas. All right, we'll give you 1 more minute to get a couple of answers in the chat box and then we'll share out. And if you feel like you want to unmute yourself and speak, also feel free to do that as well. All right, so we've got some great ideas of field trips. We'll start with Rachel's idea of going to the Science Museum and some Children's Museum, the Discovery Center, the Planetarium, which will give students real-world experiences to explore cause and effect relationships. And this is going to be hands-on and exciting. A lot of those have interactive exhibits where students will complete some interactive activities and give them some opportunities to practice critical thinking and problem solving, and really give opportunities for understanding how those field trips connect to what we're doing during program time. So thank you for sharing. I will say a great way to expand and making sure these kinds of field trips are meaningful is setting aside time before and or after to reflect, to make that explicit connection of what students are going to be learning, what they are going to be connecting to, what they're doing during that program time. Just making that a relationship really explicit can be really powerful for students. Michaela shared, a trip to the wastewater treatment plant, which I did that when I was a kid. It was the coolest thing ever. I was like 9 and I still remember it. So I am giving a big thumbs up to that idea. Students are going to hear from different speakers, talk about all the different steps, and they're going to get a chance to ask different questions to understand the process, and follow along as the water goes from dirty to clean. And this is an opportunity to get them future ready. This might be an area of interest for some of them, so it's a career connection. They'll be able to connect it to what they see at home. So giving them that experiential learning of you drink water at home, and it's safe to drink. How do we actually make sure that that's possible? So having that connection is really exciting. Having that kind of future forward thinking, positive youth development, thinking about the future, can be really fun. And again, we always want to set time for reflection. If you have students, if you would like them to ask questions, which is a great idea, it might be hard for some of them to come up with questions in the moment. So it could be a great idea to set some time aside before the field trip for them to generate some questions so they have those ideas coming into that field trip and they're ready to have those meaningful conversations with the people who work at the wastewater treatment plant. So 5 stars, love that idea. Then we have an idea. Ooh, Tyrone is going to take a field trip to the Roper Mountain Science Center, which will give kids that opportunity for some project-based learning in nature, and it ties into reading goals because there's a lot of signs, written instructions, and it can also be a motivator for students to read because students will be interested in nature. So when your students come back to your program, you can build on that interest that was already peaked when they were at the science center, and encourage them to read books or essays or whatever about the nature that they saw so they can expand their learning. And that's really leveraging that student voice and that student interest. And that can give kids a sense of competence. They already had so much fun. They did all these cool activities, and now they're expanding their knowledge base. So that positive youth development piece is right there. So thank you for sharing that. Sashoy shared a grocery store budget challenge. Yes, this is such a good one of thinking about how can you use your limited budget to buy healthiest foods. And so students have to stay under $20, justify their choices. This connects, it sounds like, to a lot of math goals because students have to do price comparison. They have to calculate sales tax. And they really have to, that kind of positive youth development or that reflection piece of thinking about needs versus wants. So what do you actually have the budget for? What can you actually spend money on? And this is a really great way to build that connection to real world of students will grow up and have to do the grocery shopping themselves. So really making sure that they are able to do that and have success in that when they reach adulthood or as they move into adulthood. So thank you for sharing that. And now we really just want to touch base on the idea of bringing it all together and the fact that we want to make sure that the activities we implement that are intentional are a central piece of our schedule. We want to make sure every activity, everything we do with our students serves a purpose, and to name that and give opportunities for students to practice new skills and reinforce some of those skills. And that includes making sure that things like playtime are really meaningful. Of when students are, for example, playing outside, they have to do collaboration and communication when they're playing with others. There may be some conflict resolution. We know sometimes arguments can break out. So those are essential skills that students are developing during play. And giving students those opportunities, again, for self-regulation as well, because if you get upset, you need to be able to manage those feelings, not just kind of behave in ways that are not pro-social, let's say. And we also want to think about how our staff are an essential piece of this. Our staff are, of course, the most important piece for an effectively implemented program. If you don't have staff buy-in, you're not going to get very far. So we want to make sure that we are giving staff opportunities to get interested. We're giving them the training and support they need to implement these effective programs. Effective, intentionally designed activities. You also want to think about how many activities are staff going to be responsible for versus how many are they given to implement. So if you are designing some of these activities and then give them to your frontline staff versus having students do the intentional design process that we followed today, of creating activities that are going to develop those academic skills that we can measure to see if we're successful, that make sure to practice 21st century skills and positive youth development, all those pieces. We also want to focus on and leverage our staff's strengths. So if you have a staff member who's really passionate about STEM, give them opportunities to create activities and then implement them. Staff, just like youth, want opportunities for competence, and that's a really good place for that. Of when staff have a real strength, give them a space, give them a stage to demonstrate that, give them that opportunity to collaborate with other staff, create those meaningful activities. So those are really things to focus on and identify. And then the last piece we want to highlight is our staffing planner. So we know that sometimes it can be challenging to find enough staff. But as we are hiring and as we are bringing in our staff, we want to focus on, as I mentioned, what kinds of activities staff are going to be leading. Now, this is going to vary a little bit based on the program design of your program, of your site, but we want to make sure that we are aligning those areas of staff expertise and staff interest with their responsibilities. So what we would love for you to do is to really think back to that activity we've been following through this whole presentation. And do you have a staff member or members in mind that would be really great at leading that activity? So we would love for you to share in the chat box if you have a staff member or staff members in mind. What are the key qualifications? What makes you think that person or persons are the best people for the job of running this activity? So whether you were talking about a field trip or you were talking about a hands-on science project, who's that staff member and why do you think they're the right person? So we'll give you just a couple of minutes to think about that and pop your answer into the chat box. And if you prefer, again, you can always unmute yourself and share.
Hey, Yana, this is Susan. I sent you a direct message in the chat.
All right, let's check out if we have some ideas. Melissa shared that we have some fabulous staff. And one particular staff member, Eric, is great at leading Lego activities and would be super pumped about getting kids learning about anything, and that positive spirit, that positive attitude, that can be everything. Having those strong connections, I'm seeing that of those relationships with our kids, getting them passionate about just about anything. We would love to see that. So thinking about what your staff are most qualified for, those staff that have really strong connections. If you have a staff member, Burton shared a staff member who's a former principal who really specializes in literacy. So maybe a former literacy coach or literacy teacher, whatever that expertise is, we want to leverage those skills that our staff already have. And those can be conversations with your staff of what kinds of activities they really want to lead. So thank you everyone for sharing all of your ideas. Based on the conversation we had today and building on everything we've been doing through this year of planner to create these meaningful activities, we would love for you to take a look again, review again your summer learning planner, and filling in more of those intentional activities you want to implement, how you're going to create those meaningful field trips that aren't just kind of fun, but also are meaningful learning opportunities. And continue to fill out and fill in that intentional design planner to make sure that you are continuing to give your students and your staff those positive learning experiences that are also connecting to those academic goals, to the positive youth development, to the 21st century skills goals, all of those pieces. You can always continue the conversation on our knowledge network, and having those opportunities to continue to talk to other 21st century practitioners in this group, as well as from all over the US. We want to thank you all so much for being here, so much for taking the time to be with us. We do have a feedback form that we are sharing in the chat box, or I've just shared in the chat box. If you could take a minute to fill that, let us know how we did. We're so excited to continue this conversation with you all. Take just a minute to fill that out. Let us know what you are interested in hearing more about. Thank you so much to your state leadership for continuing to have us through this series. We really appreciate you. And I think we're really excited to continue on. And Chaz, it's been great to be with you today.
Absolutely. Always love talking with you about awesome ways to improve program.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to our subgrantees. We do appreciate how involved you are in these trainings. Intact has actually sang your praises to the U.S. Department of Ed, and they shared that with me during a meeting that I had with them about a week ago. And they were impressed with North Carolina's participation rate as well. So I just wanted to say kudos to all of you on the call today. Thank you for your attention and your participation. We greatly appreciate it. And please continue to provide feedback to Intact. We love our partnership that we have with them, and we want to continue to grow that. So let's just make sure there are no other questions in the chat. And if we don't see any, then we will let you all go. Do you see any other ones in there, Yana, that you need to address?
I don't. I will just post that feedback form if you could take a minute,
Yes.
if everyone could take a minute to fill that out. But yeah, Susan, absolutely. We all love doing these trainings because your subgrantees share so many great ideas. We're really excited to hear about some of these activities that hopefully get implemented this summer, and how that intentional design thinking is really transformative and giving students really meaningful learning opportunities. So we love working with you all. We love the meaningful conversations. You know, I can do a monologue. It's not a problem, but it's so much more fun when we're hearing these ideas, because I'm one person and all of you practice, Chaz and I, we have our own experience, but all of you have all of those meaningful experiences that you can share that expertise. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. All right. We hope you all have a great rest of your week. Hey, Ashton, there's a question in the chat on mileage. If you want to take a look at that real quick, if you're still on the call, or one of our fiscal folks, Monica or Katrina.
It's related to what is the mileage rate for field trips now? I do believe it changed. As far as we know, we have not gotten any updates from school transportation. If that individual wants to reach out to one of us, that's fine. But we are still following the guidance in the grant guidance, which is $1.75 per mile if it's a passenger bus over 15, which is representative of the yellow bus rate. And that's just for mileage if you are paying a driver. But for field trips, that is a different form to fill out. So they would have to include that in the field trip. It depends on what type of transportation they're using for the field trip. It could be a motor coach bus, which would be different, or it could be a 15 passenger, which would be at the 72-cent rate as of January 2026. But if it is the equivalent to a yellow bus and you're just asking for mileage, is $1.75 per mile.
Or if you're a school district, it's your district rate, whatever that would be.
They could use the district rate, which would include the cost of the driver.
Of the driver.
Yes. And if they want additional information, they can reach out to any of us. Can reach out to me here on the fiscal.
It looks like it may be one of yours, Katrina, because it says CMS school bus, so that must be Charlotte.
Yeah, it's
so.
Charlotte Mecklenburg School. Yeah.
Okay. So Miss
Okay.
Berry, if you want to reach out directly to Katrina, she'll be glad to talk with you. And Ashton, if you're still on the call, if you want to go ahead and end the meeting. Okay, thanks.